I wanted to find a bank with a purpose. I wanted to find a place that would take my money and not use it to cause the financial crisis, but to fix the financial crisis and to help end income inequality.
The people that we employ are usually clients right off the streets. They don't have an account, but Amalgamated is willing to get that started for them.
Their reputation of supporting the working man, I think, speaks for itself. This is a bank that cares for their customers, and I appreciate that.
We were able to access a construction loan through the bank's programs, and that loan has helped us house 28 families in the community.
Amalgamated is a bank that was started for and about working people.
Many of our customers have a deep commitment to advocating for social and economic justice. We share that commitment, and we're not afraid to stand up and say that we need to change some of the way that the country does business.
Giving you everything you need to fight the Trump administration. This is The Bill Press Show, live at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
First, it was his national security advisor, then his campaign manager, then his deputy campaign manager. Now, Robert Mueller and the FBI raid the offices of Donald Trump's personal attorney. It is closing in on the Oval Office. Hello, everybody, on a Tuesday, April 10. How about it? So good to see you today. Thank you for joining us. It is the Bill Press Show. Here from our nation's capital, reaching out to you all over this great land of ours with the news of the day. It is huge news in something that is unprecedented in the history of the FBI and the history of private attorney-client relationships. The FBI getting a warrant to seize documents, including documents on the $150,000 payment by Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's personal attorney, to porn star Stormy Daniels. They raided Michael Cohen's early yesterday, his home, his office at Rock Center, and his hotel room at the Loews Regency Hotel in New York. A clean sweep, and Donald Trump says it is outrageous and is nothing more than an attack on our country. That's certainly number one of what we're going to be talking about today with all of you. So you want to join in right now with your comments on Twitter as we walk through the news of the day. Send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show. There is a few other stories, of course. But first,
this
as
is
always,
Full Court Press.
Yes, all the really big stories happening right here, Bill. The world's busiest airport has been announced. It was announced by the Airports Council International Trade Group. They take a look at the passenger travel in the year 2017, and the busiest airport in the world is?
Atlanta.
Atlanta is correct, Bill. Atlanta is the busiest airport in the world. Number 2 is Beijing Capital Airport, and the third place is Dubai. Number 4 was Tokyo, Hanada's Airport, and number 5, right here in America, LAX. O'Hare was number 6. O'Hare was number 6. A very, very good guess. So that is it's interesting to point out how many are here in America. They also point out that in the top 10 were a couple of other American airports, Dallas-Fort Worth, Denver, and Las Vegas, or Denver, Charlotte, and Las Vegas, also in the top 20.
Las Vegas?
In the top 20.
Wow.
Yeah, which I didn't really see that coming. It's baseball season, Bill, believe it or not, but
Nats won last night.
Thank God. They broke a 5-game losing streak.
I know, God.
Well, the Twins and Mariners had a game on Sunday, but it was postponed because it was snowing. It's not supposed to snow during baseball games. That's not how this works.
This year.
This year is a different year. The Twins were supposed to host the Mariners, but as I mentioned, they had to postpone the game because of snow. The game will be made up on May 14th as part of a doubleheader. And congratulations are in order to our friend,
Duckworth.
Senator Tammy Duckworth.
Absolutely.
Senator Tammy Duckworth from Illinois delivered her second daughter yesterday, making her the very first U.S. senator to give birth. while in office. Her daughter, whose name is Miley Pearl Bowlesby, after her husband, Brian Bowlesby's great aunt. She was the great aunt was an Army officer and a nurse who served in World War II. So they named it the daughter after her. Big shoes to fill there.
I know. Very, very nice. She's a great, great senator, Tammy Duckworth. A real tribute to the American people and to the people of Illinois. We were with her at the March for Our Lives.
Yeah.
In a wheelchair.
Nice.
Right up front, and she was in great spirits. Had her daughter with her, the other daughter with her.
Right.
Yeah.
Things just got a lot more interesting for her.
So yeah, making history.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing we've talked about. Like, there's really
she's made history in many ways.
There's really no protocol for this.
No. Do you think they'll let her breastfeed on the floor?
We'll have to find out. We'll have to find out.
Some of those senators might object.
This is the Bill Press Show.
It's a disgrace. It's an attack on our country, says Donald Trump. But for once, he's not talking about immigrants coming north across the border. He's talking about our own FBI raiding the offices of his attorney. Well, if his attorney hadn't done anything wrong, maybe they wouldn't have raided his offices. Ha-ha, what do you say, everybody? Great to see you today. Here we go. It is the Bill Press Show on a Tuesday, April 10, coming to you live from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and our little perch on Capitol Hill, right down the street from the United States Capitol building, where this news rocked the Capitol yesterday afternoon. Donald Trump ready to meet with his military advisors to talk about what they're going to do about Syria, when all the reporters wanted to talk about was the news that just broke about the FBI and this morning raid on the home, the office, and the hotel room of Donald Trump's personal attorney, Michael Cohen. Again, good to see you today. We are out here with you anywhere in this great land of ours, wherever you are. We're right there alongside of you, in your ear, in your face. Online on youtube.com/The Bill Press Show, on television, on Free Speech TV, coast to coast, and out in the greater Chicago area. Hello, WCPT listeners. Great to be with you again. So good to see so many of you last Wednesday. And in Indiana, statewide on Indiana Talks. Yes, indeed, and congratulations to Senator Tammy Duckworth from Illinois. It's a girl. Yes, indeed, her second girl, but her first girl as a U.S. Senator, and indeed, more than that, the first U.S. Senator in the history of this country to give birth while a member of the Senate. So Tammy Duckworth making history yet again.
She likes to make history with that type of stuff. I mean, she's a badass and was before this, but this is so cool.
Yeah, very, very great job as a member of Congress from Illinois, Deputy Secretary of the Veterans Administration for a while under President Obama, and of course before that, a real hero in Iraq, and lost 2 of her limbs at least in Iraq, and yet a real fighter and a great champion, great U.S. Senator, and now a new mom. So congratulations, Senator Tammy Duckworth. Yes, and that big story of the day, it broke yesterday, so here's what happened. The FBI, they got a search warrant. They showed up at the offices of Michael Cohen. Remember him. He is the president's personal attorney, been Donald Trump's personal attorney for a long time. He was not part of the campaign, but he was Donald Trump's personal attorney before the campaign, during the campaign, and still is today. It was the same Michael Cohen, you remember, who admits that he paid to Stormy Daniels $130,000 hush money, an NDA, so-called non-disclosure agreement, not to talk about her affair with Donald Trump from 2005 through 2006. And he said he did so out of his own pocket, out of love for Donald Trump, just to keep him out of trouble. He made that payment, of course, 11 days before the election in late October 2016. But the FBI, they seized documents yesterday with this search warrant from his office, from his home, and from his hotel room at the Loews Regency in New York. Hugely significant, as every legal expert said yesterday. First of all, the FBI, this is a big deal. To go after the president's private attorney, the FBI didn't do this like loosely, right? They didn't do this on a whim. You know, they had to have serious evidence of wrongdoing, of criminality, to justify a warrant and to take that move, which is certainly, in one sense, a risky move. And they wouldn't just roll the dice unless they were pretty sure that they knew what was there, and it was evidence that they could use to convict Michael Cohen. Among the documents they seized were the documents related to this $130,000 payment, but we don't know what else they've got or what else they were looking for. The Washington Post reports this morning that what the FBI is investigating Michael Cohen for are 3 counts: bank fraud, wire fraud, and a possible illegal campaign contribution, in the sense that if that $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels were made right toward the, and it was made 11 days before the election, was that, in effect, a campaign contribution to help Donald Trump quiet this very negative story just before we all went to the polls in November 2016. And the question is also raised, if Robert Mueller did this, he wasn't just was he looking beyond Stormy Daniels and looking, remember, this is the Russian investigation. So could Michael Cohen, raises so many questions, but could Michael Cohen be the bridge between the Russian investigation and Stormy Daniels? And are they in some way connected through the money? Again, who knows? But once again, we say this all the time. This means the Mueller investigation is not winding down, and it is not going away. And it is a criminal investigation against the President of the United States, led by the Department of Justice and the FBI.
Like, whether or not that actually happens, right? Time will tell. We'll see.
Yeah.
Right. But you hit on it a little bit when, like, we've seen Michael Cohen for many, many years, and people that have followed Donald Trump know that Michael Cohen is essentially one of the people in his inner circle. He is his lawyer. He keeps his secrets.
As much
he keeps
as
his documents.
Anybody.
Like, he probably knows more about Donald Trump than Melania knows.
And he and Trump are buddies. He and Trump and Melania have dinner all the time together. No, I mean, he's an alter ego.
If anybody knows where the bodies are buried in the life of Donald Trump, it's Michael Cohen.
Yeah, absolutely. So, boy, this is... So let's let Pierre Thomas from ABC News kind of sum up. Pierre Thomas, I worked with him way back at CNN. He's been the legal affairs reporter for ABC for years, and he kind of summed up the case yesterday. And then we'll hear from Donald Trump, who wasn't happy with what happened.
Daniels says she had an affair with the president back in 2006, something the White House denies. Cohen's attorney, Stephen Ryan, calling the raid, quote, completely inappropriate and unnecessary, adding it resulted in the unnecessary seizure of protected attorney-client communications between a lawyer and his clients. Ryan also said the raid was a result of a referral by the special counsel Bob Mueller. A source telling ABC News the FBI raids were not about Russia. The case is being assigned to federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York.
All right. So, and by the way, and the people who conducted this raid are people that Donald Trump appointed to head the FBI office in New York and the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York after he fired Preet Bharara.
Yeah.
Right. So, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, the president was getting ready to sit down with his military advisors to talk about what they're going to do about Syria when another bomb exploded, which was this Michael Cohen raid. As far as Donald Trump said, it is an attack on our country.
It's frankly a real disgrace. It's an attack on our country in a true sense. It's an attack on what we all stand for.
Yeah, right. Was that Tammy Duckworth's new baby?
No, that was the president himself.
Oh, that's the president himself.
Whining, crying.
Yeah, right. No, it was not an attack on our country. It's part of a criminal investigation into the actions of the President of the United States. I keep repeating that. Our president, somehow, however it happened, is Donald Trump. This investigation is a criminal investigation about Donald Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, don't get too diverted into any other issues or whatever else you're out there talking about at any one time. The central issue is there is an ongoing criminal investigation by the Department of Justice into the president himself at the Oval Office, and the people that Mueller is going after are closer and closer to Donald Trump himself. As for the investigation, Trump repeats again. Here's what he's been calling it since day one.
I think it's disgraceful, and so does a lot of other people. This is a pure and simple witch hunt.
Mm-hmm. So does a lot of other people. Yeah, name one outside of John Kelly or Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Richard Nixon thought that the same thing that was happening to him was a witch hunt, too.
Yeah.
So.
And as far as these FBI people, these that are working for Robert Mueller,
biased group of people. These people have the biggest conflicts of interest I've ever seen.
And the one who has the biggest conflict of interest, again, poor little Jeffy Sessions. Jefferson Beauregard. He tries so hard, kisses Donald Trump's ass in public 5 times a day, will do anything he wants. He has been the most loyal little puppy dog foot soldier of Donald Trump, of anybody.
It's amazing that we feel sorry for Jeff Sessions, who is a monster.
A monster.
A monster. And Donald Trump has made us feel sorry for him.
He's tried so hard to make up to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump still, again yesterday, blames it all on little Jeffy.
They raid an office of a personal attorney early in the morning, and I think it's a disgrace. So we'll be talking about it more. But this is the most conflicted group of people I've ever seen. The Attorney General made a terrible mistake.
The Attorney General, there it is, made a terrible mistake. And what he means, of course, because Sessions did not himself personally order this raid yesterday because he couldn't, because he had recused himself. So it was Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, who okayed the request by Robert Mueller to go after Michael Cohen. But again, for the president, it's that initial mistake that Jeff Sessions made, in his opinion, for which he will never, never, never forgive Jeff Sessions, no matter how many times Jeff Sessions kisses his ass in public.
He should have certainly let us know if he was going to recuse himself, and we would have put a different Attorney General in. So he made what I consider to be a very terrible mistake for the country.
Yeah,
he's just openly regretting the fact that he appointed Jeff Sessions.
Yeah, he says, I wish I hadn't appointed him. Right?
How do you get up in the morning and do your job when your boss is saying that about you publicly, like for everyone to hear? That's just the worst. And Jeff Sessions is going to keep on doing his thing.
If he had any self-respect, he'd resign.
Yeah,
Jeff Sessions.
Yeah. But I think we all know that he does not.
He does not. No. I go back to, over a year ago, I said he should have resigned and run for his old Senate seat again.
Sure.
He would have been better off in the Senate.
Exactly.
And remember, again, he was the first senator to endorse Donald Trump when everybody else laughed him off the Senate floor, right? So, he's been doing everything he can to impress Donald Trump and to buddy up to Donald Trump from the very, very beginning. The other thing that Donald Trump did say, he classically goes after Robert Mueller, witch hunt, classically goes after Jeff Sessions. He also said about this group, we had that clip, the most biased group of people, but he continued after that and said, they're all Democrats, or just about all. They're either Democrats or a couple of Republicans that worked for President Obama, he continues, listen up, they're not looking at the other side. They're not looking at the Hillary Clinton, horrible things that she did and all of the crimes that were committed.
Hell yeah.
So once again, right, he tries to bring it back. Why are they investigating me? Why aren't they investigating Hillary Clinton? Boy, how many times has he tried that dog don't hunt? Yeah. But he keeps trying, and he keeps calling a witch hunt. So what everybody is asking today, again, is this the straw that breaks the camel's back? Is Donald Trump so riled up now after this, when he hears those footsteps getting closer and closer to the Oval Office, that he will do what everybody has warned him he'd better never do, and that is, will he fire Robert Mueller? Yesterday, he wouldn't say no. A reporter did throw this question at him as the reporters were winding up and leaving this little press availability. But the president didn't duck it. He doesn't give an answer, but he did somewhat indicate that it's still on the table. Here he is.
Why don't I just fire Mueller? Well, I think it's a disgrace what's going on. We'll see what happens. But I think it's really a sad situation when you look at what happened. And many people have said you should fire him.
Oh, many
people are saying.
Yeah, many people have said you should fire Robert Mueller. Maybe John Bolton has said that.
Anybody on Fox News has said it, but not real people.
Right, yeah, exactly. And we know so many people have warned, including Paul Ryan, the speaker, that if he fires Robert Mueller, that could provoke a constitutional crisis. Because remember, so he can't fire him directly. He'd have to fire Rod Rosenstein. He'd have to ask Rosenstein to fire Mueller. Rosenstein, I have no doubt, would say, not going to do it. Submit my resignation. So then they'd have to appoint somebody else and keep going down the line, a la Richard Nixon and the Saturday Night Massacre, until he found somebody like Robert Bork, who did it for Richard Nixon, who would actually fire Robert Mueller. And then, I'm not saying that would lead to immediate impeachment, but then that just might get some Republicans in Congress to break with the president. But don't hold your breath. Even at that point, don't hold your breath. But certainly for the president yesterday, and we know he's wanted to fire Robert Mueller for the last year, but for him to get that close and not say, no, we're going to let Mueller do his job. Just say, we'll see what happens. So this is the biggest news yet, maybe, out of the Mueller investigation.
Oh, you're right about that. I mean,
Right.
This could be a real turning point.
Yeah.
Depending on what they get from Michael Cohen and what they found and all that type of stuff, this could be the moment that we all look back and go, oh, my God, this is when it changed.
Now, as if that's not enough, the New York Times reports that Mueller is also looking at another connection here, and that is a connection between Donald Trump and Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen, he's the theme here. He's everywhere. Between Donald Trump, Michael Cohen, and a Ukrainian billionaire by the name of Viktor Pinchuk, who made a $150,000 contribution to the Trump Foundation in October 2015. So about 6 months after Donald Trump had announced for president, and he paid the foundation $150,000 to get Donald Trump to do a little video for some charity or some organization in the Ukraine. But again, this is foreign money coming into the United States. Boy, don't I remember Donald Trump making a lot about the Clinton Foundation accepting foreign money? Oh, God, they would never do that.
How
right?
soon we forget.
Yeah. So this is foreign money from a Ukrainian billionaire who is very close to the Kremlin into the Trump operation somehow. And that contribution was solicited and arranged by Michael Cohen. Where did that money go? What was that money used for? What was Viktor Pinchuk What contacts and connections was he providing to the Kremlin in response for this, in return for this access to Donald Trump? It's a whole nother area, which if the FBI had not raided the office of Michael Cohen yesterday, that probably would have been the big story today. But it just, I think it proves again how Robert Mueller is following the money. And we've said for a long time that if anything does bring Donald Trump down, I don't think it'll be the emails, the DNC emails. I don't think it'll be the hacking or those they were efforts to influence this election or any so-called collusion. I think it'll be the money. I think it'll be the direct conflicts of money and his ties with Russia that have resulted in his giving Russia a pass on trying to influence our election. That certainly seems to be where Robert Mueller is going, that and the obstruction of justice. Both, as we see today, more serious charges than ever before. Meanwhile, what is happening on the Syria front? We thought that we would know by now. Yesterday, the president did meet with his military advisors, as we mentioned, and all he would say was, as he says here, we're working on it. We're taking our time. We'll know something soon, but right now we're just weighing our options.
We're making a decision as to what we do with respect to the horrible attack that was made near Damascus, and it will be met, and it will be met forcefully.
Yesterday, up at the United Nations, our ambassador to the United Nations, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, clearly says it is blood on the hands of Russia because of their support for Bashar al-Assad.
The Russian regime, whose hands are all covered in the blood of Syrian children, cannot be ashamed by pictures of its victims. We've tried that before.
Nope. And she says, no doubt, the Russians knew what was going on, are directly involved.
Russian officials are on the ground helping direct the regime's Starve and Surrender campaign. And Iranian allied forces do much of the dirty work.
So I think we can expect, as we said yesterday, a military response, probably some kind of a surgical strike. Wouldn't be surprised if it happens as quickly as today, but we thought it was going to happen yesterday. On another front, we've talked several times about here we are. We're in 2018. These are the midterm elections. And a story reported in the Washington Post this morning that says that Republicans have already given up the House. But privately, they're saying, we know we're going to lose the House. We're just going to try to hold on to the Senate because the Senate is going to be our bulwark against legislation that Democrats might pass in the House, against any impeachment attempts, or our ability to continue to pack the federal courts with Donald Trump conservative judges. A little more evidence of how I don't want to, screw this whole thing up by taking it for granted that Democrats take the House, because Democrats could still blow it. But they have a good shot at taking the House. Again, they need 23 seats. And the average loss for a president's party in his first term is 43 seats. Average loss. So even if it's just the average, Democrats have a 20-seat advantage there. They need 23. The average loss is 43 for the party in power. So we know that. That looks good. Conor Lamb in Pennsylvania winning certainly looks good. Politico yesterday giving some figures about something else that really looks good. And by the way, the generic polls show that people generally, although each race is an individual race, so these generic polls you have to kind of take with a grain of salt. But generic polls show that Democrats have about anywhere from a 7.5% to a 10% advantage, meaning 10% more Americans want to see Democrats take back control of the House. Another factor that we talked about before is the enthusiasm gap between Democrats who are really fired up for these midterms and Republicans who are sort of so-so. Here's some numbers that came out of Politico yesterday I found very interesting. among candidates, overall candidates for the House this year, there are 1,415 Democrats running for the House, 934 Republicans. Again, the enthusiasm gap. Among women, get this, there are 424 Democratic women running for the House, 124 Republicans, Republican women. Among men, 991 Democratic men running for the House, 810 Republican men. So in all three of those categories, Democrats really have put more players on the field, and again, running candidates in many races where for years there hasn't even been a Democratic candidate like up in Pennsylvania's 18 again. So things are looking up if Democrats keep fielding great candidates and with the right message, they could do well and take back the House this year. It's looking good.
I hate to interrupt and change the topic.
Uh-oh. Donald Trump is tweeting.
He has tweeted.
He has tweeted?
He has tweeted.
Let me see. There he is. Hi, Donnie.
Yeah, he's up.
He's total witch hunt.
Yeah, he tweeted this morning. First of all, he tweeted couple of very short tweets for him. Attorney-client privilege is dead! ! That is what he tweeted just a couple of minutes ago. And then right after that, he followed up with another tweet that just says, as you mentioned, a total witch hunt! !
Exclamation point.
So I think there will probably be more coming.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If we know anything about Donald Trump. But, I mean, this definitely sounds like someone who definitely, positively does not have anything to hide.
And he did make those comments to the media yesterday, reporters, but some people were wondering, why hasn't he tweeted more about this?
Right.
Yeah. Well,
here we are.
I think maybe
executive time,
and he had to wait and see what Fox and Friends had to say about it, right?
Right.
Yeah, right.
All the very important news on Fox and Friends this morning, like Larry Gatlin's 70th birthday.
Yeah. He had to wait and see what President Steve Ducey had to say about it.
Right.
All right. Quick break now. This is another big day in Washington for another wholly unrelated reason, and that is Mark Zuckerberg is in town, and he is up in front of a Senate committee today. Oh, man, is he going to face a barrage of questions? I don't think there'll be friendly questions from any side, unfriendly from both sides. Nancy Scola from Politico, senior technology reporter, is going to tell us all about it. Coming up next with a quick break, we'll be back. Stay with us. Send us your comments on Twitter @BP Show.
Take the Bill Press Show anywhere you go. Download our free podcast, search for The Bill Press Show on iTunes, and catch the highlights from every show.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning. Why?
Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you eat stuff like this.
You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately.
That's why I'm ready to quit.
I forgot. I'll do better. Please, don't quit on me.
Okay, but remember, it's not what you say, it's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Adventure can be found anywhere, but the best place to start is in the forest.
I spy something beginning with S.
Snow?
No.
Snow-covered trees?
Nothing to do with snow.
Head outside to discover incredible animals and beautiful plants that come together to create an unforgettable adventure.
Wow.
So grab your loved ones.
Don't even.
And explore a world of possibilities.
Come on, this way.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find the closest forest or park to you.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He really likes to be around people. And as soon as I start to make my breakfast, Hamilton is right there. I get out my mat and I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath. He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties. He knows he's a pretty big deal. I mean, look at this little face. How could you not love him?
This is the Bill Press Show.
About it, Tuesday, April 10, the Bill Press Show, with you coast to coast, online, on the radio, and on television from our studio on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., where we're brought to you today by the American Federation of Government Employees, those great men and women of the AFGE under President J. David Cox, who keep our federal agencies running day in and day out. Republican, Democratic administrations, they're just serving the American people, proud to get up and work for their fellow Americans every day. We salute them, thank them for the support of the program, and recommend you check out their website at afge.org. Yes, we want to get into Jeff Zuckerberg's appearance before the Senate Commerce Committee, I guess, and Judiciary.
And Judiciary, yes.
Nancy Scola is here from Politico, senior technology reporter, to help us through it. Hi, Nancy. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
And we have been, we're talking a little bit in the first half hour about whether or not Donald Trump might fire Robert Mueller. He's getting some advice to do so. I just noticed during the break that Lou Dobbs last night on his show told the president, you have to fire that son of a bitch, Robert Mueller.
Is that what he said?
That's what Lou Dobbs said.
That's great.
So
That's great.
When Donald Trump says, a lot of people think that I should fire Robert Mueller, then we know who he's listening to.
Just listen to Lou Dobbs.
Right, and we're listening to you.
Lou Dobbs, of all people. Come on.
We are listening to you and your comments, Peter.
Yes, indeed. We're on Twitter at BP Show, at BP Show. Joey weighs in, says, innocent men don't get raided by the FBI. Long time coming. Remember, this is, of course, using Trump's own words against him, what he said about Hillary Clinton. And Phil, our friend Phil, says on Donald Trump's tweet this morning that it's a total witch hunt. Michael Cohen is a witch. Burn him. Anyway, if you have any comments, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter at BP Show.
But it just maybe pointing out, underlining that first comment is, the U.S. Attorney and the FBI would not do this raid unless they had serious evidence to indicate that there was criminal activity there. Because this is a very, very bold, unusual, maybe unprecedented move. They wouldn't do so without compelling evidence of some kind of criminality. We'll see what comes of it. Back to Mark Zuckerberg, rather, Nancy. So what kind of a reception do you think he's going to get today?
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty heated and harsh.
From both sides?
I think so. I think Democrats are a little more worked up about the role that Facebook played in the U.S. presidential election last time around, both on the use of data that we now learned coming from the company Cambridge Analytica, the allegations around that, but also the talk about so-called fake news, what sort of Russian interference may have taken place on the platform. So Democrats are not pleased at all. Republicans are probably 8 on the scale of 10, where Democrats are 10 on the scale of 10 of being annoyed with Facebook. So it's not good all around. He sort of made the rounds yesterday on Capitol Hill, talking to senators one-on-one. So that seemed to help a bit. Usually they're a little bit nicer on people that took the time to stop by their offices and have a talk. So
it's also interesting how much money Mark Zuckerberg has given to these politicians over the years, right? Like, it's a lot of money.
He has been generous, yes.
Oh, right. I've never seen...
Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, to clarify, so Facebook and Facebook employees have been pretty generous. Mark Zuckerberg tends to stay out of this sort of donation business. But yes.
I've never seen him in a tie before.
That
he
was
looked
jarring.
pretty sharp, I thought,
he
actually.
did. He totally did.
There was an interesting comment on Twitter. We were sort of discussing his sartorial choices on Twitter, and someone made the comment that he had a spread collar, which is sort of a classic DC collar. And it indicates he was never going to take his tie off that day. It was sort of a suit of armor and it's not popular, I guess, in Silicon Valley, because Silicon Valley, if you wear a tie, it's usually for one meeting in the day and then you take it off. So you wear a slightly different collar. So he was ready for DC.
Oh, yeah. I mean, ties are not popular in Silicon Valley. No.
No, it really was jarring to see him on TV walking in a suit. I've never seen him in a tie before.
No, I haven't. No.
And he was one of those people.
Never seen a picture of him in a tie before.
It had the effect of somehow making him look younger. Usually suits make you look older, but he looked a bit younger.
So let's get back to the facts. I mean, how many people, the privacy of how many people was given away or lost or sold by Facebook?
The current statistic is up to 87 million, and that's sort of like the outer bounds of the universe of people implicated in this particular situation.
And how do you know if you're one of them?
They will tell you. If you log into Facebook yesterday and today, it should be at the top of your newsfeed, letting you know if you're one of the people affected.
Mm-hmm. And what can you do about it? What can they do about it?
You can feel real bad about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that helps.
The central question of the debate is whether the data that was released has since been deleted. Facebook claims that they certified that it has been. More recent reports are maybe that it has not been.
So I was interested this morning. There's a group called American Future Fund. I know nothing about them.
Me neither.
They have 8 questions for Mark Zuckerberg. This is a full-page color ad in the New York Times this morning. But what is the first question is, let's just run through this. 2 weeks ago, the New York Times reported that Cambridge Analytica harvested the personal data of 50 million. That's what we first heard, 50 million. Now you say the number is 87 million. What's the real number, and why did it increase by 37 million in 1 week?
So to be fair, the first number of 50 million came from press reports. Facebook at first said, we don't know the full extent of this.
Yeah.
They have all said all along, we need to investigate. When we figure out what's going on, we'll let you know. So the 87 million was the first figure that they've come out with.
Okay. Second question is, am I one of the 87 million? I think we just covered this.
Yep.
Are my kids? Well, you find out by logging on to your Facebook account, right? And they will tell you. Okay. So where did that data, I'm away from this page for a second, where did that data go?
So the data was collected by a researcher at Cambridge University in England. He collected as part of a sort of personality quiz that people tend to take on Facebook. I'm not sure why. At the time that he ran this quiz, which was about the 2014 era, there was a setting on Facebook where you could share not only your own personal data, but the data of your friends. It was sort of a friends of friends feature. So the researcher collected that data, the people that logged in to take his quiz. It was about 270,000 people. Those people had what we're learning to be 87 million friends. Those users also shared the data of their friends with this researcher. That's sort of kosher as far as Facebook worked at the time. What he did was then sell that data to a firm called Cambridge Analytica. That was not kosher. And that firm happened to be co-founded by Steve Bannon, who would later go on to become the chairman of the CEO of the Trump campaign. So there were real political implications at sort of the loss of this data. One of the questions that if I were sitting up on the dais today asking Mark Zuckerberg is, at what point did you realize that Cambridge Analytica was a pretty politically partisan firm working in the United States? And if you learned that at the time in the course of the presidential election, at that point, it wouldn't have been appropriate to maybe let the public know.
Did Zuckerberg or the people at Facebook know that the data had gone from Facebook to Cambridge University and from Cambridge University to Cambridge Analytica?
Yes.
They did? So they could track it that way?
They were told, I'm sorry to interrupt, they were told that by reporters, mostly at The Guardian in the UK.
And they didn't do anything about it?
They said that Cambridge Analytica, both Cambridge Analytica and the researcher at Cambridge University certified to them that they had deleted the data. They let the matter drop there.
Okay. So Cambridge Analytica paid for this data from this professor, right?
Yes.
Did Facebook get any of that money?
No.
So Facebook did not sell this information.
No. It was sort of a lose-lose for them.
Yeah.
They got in trouble and didn't get any of the profit.
Okay. Back to the New York Times list here from American Future Fund, which interestingly, their subhead I just noticed here says, advocating conservative free market ideals. So I don't think this is any liberal outfit here that's posing these questions, but these are questions that maybe everybody has. A lot of people have it anyway. 3, does Facebook keep track of me even when I'm not using Facebook?
That's an interesting question, and I don't know that we're completely sure because Facebook actually runs a lot of the infrastructure of the web. If you use Facebook, log in on other sites, which people do pretty frequently, so they're keeping track of you when you're using some of those sites and services.
What do you think? I think they're probably keeping track of us.
100%.
Huh? Don't you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't have anything necessarily to back this up, but yes, I believe it 100%.
Right. If they're not, NSA is, so
yeah, right.
One or the other, right? Yeah, maybe they're both one the same. I don't know. Can I opt out of Facebook's data collection?
You cannot use Facebook.
I guess that's pretty effective.
That's the only way, right?
Yeah. I mean, the idea is gaining traction to require Facebook to have this opt-out or even an opt-in setting, right? You would have to say, okay, I consent to using my data.
You know, for example, sometimes sites say, this site uses cookies, right?
Yeah.
So are you okay with that? Yes or no? Or Google wants to use your current location.
Location,
right? If some sites, if you're looking for the nearest pizza joint, you want them to know where you are, right? But so why couldn't you opt in and out of the data collection?
The challenge for Facebook is that's the core of its business model, is using your data to target ads well to you. Mm-hmm. Advertisers being willing to pay good amounts of money to target those ads because they know it works well on Facebook. So if you opt out, you're sort of worthless to Facebook. You're worthless to advertisers, and Facebook doesn't have much of a way of making money.
Well, that gets to the next question, which is how much money does Facebook make by selling my phone and text messaging history? Why doesn't Facebook share any of this money with me?
It's a decent question. So, in their defense, they do say, and I think there's no reason to believe it's not true. They don't actually sell your data. They sell access to you to advertisers, right? They're not sort of conveying, here's a full file on Bill Press to advertisers that are then paying for that information directly. They're saying, we want to reach consumers like Bill Press. How do we do that? They use that to help advertisers target you.
Which is pretty valuable information, right?
I think there have been estimates.
If they know that I'm interested in a certain area of goods or line of products or something, right? So those advertisers, they'll direct those advertisers. Here's a likely target.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's why Facebook's a $500 billion business.
Right. Are Facebook employees laughing at the personal photos I sent my spouse using Messenger?
I've wondered that myself.
Yeah, same.
Okay, we don't have an answer to that. Here's number 7. Why can Mark Zuckerberg delete his old Facebook messages, but I can't?
Because he's the boss and you're not.
That's about it, right? But he can?
He has enormous power. I don't actually know about the nuances of some of that, but it is worth saying that he has enormous power over an enormous company. He's sort of unchecked in some ways inside the firm itself. He's chairman of the board. He's CEO. He's the majority stakeholder.
What's the company worth?
So the estimate is about $500 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't nothing.
Yeah. And this final question sort of sums it up. Why does Facebook make it so hard to figure any of this out?
They claim they don't. It's remarkable because when you speak to them, they think, we have all the privacy settings. All you need to do is go in there and mess around and set it the way that you want it. And what we say again and again is, I work with a team of 6 tech reporters, and not that we're necessarily technical geniuses, but we should be able to figure out sort of basic consumer privacy settings. And you go in there and you set it and you don't know exactly what you've consented to.
That's the thing, right? Like, I'm not a dummy when it comes to computers and social media, right? Yeah. And I went through this phase a couple of weeks ago when this story first popped, and I said, I'm just going to delete my Facebook account. Just forget it. I'm just going to delete my Facebook account. And it's damn near impossible to just delete your Facebook account. Like, you can deactivate, and there are a couple of different ways you can do it, but like, to go in and just remove yourself from Facebook is really hard.
Yeah, and I think it, in sort of a technical level,
No, I gave up because I couldn't figure it out. They won. They totally beat me.
I think there's also it's fun to talk about. I think it points to some of the challenges inside Facebook. You have the security folks competing with the ad folks. The security folks might want to help you sort of protect your privacy, but the ad folks have real incentive for, having you stick around.
Now,
that I think, by the way, is what it really comes down to. That's why they make it so hard, is because if you go, there's some untapped money there that they're losing.
Mm-hmm. Right. So is it just Facebook?
I think, well, I'll tell you, Google and Twitter are very happy this week. They were also invited to the hearings that Mark Zuckerberg's participating in. They haven't consented to go, and no one seems to be too upset about that. So they're pretty pleased.
Just let him go by himself.
Yeah, I think Facebook is it's a more intimate digital exchange than some of these other platforms. You're giving more information to them. They're taking more information from you. So I think it's a little bit of a different situation than some of the other technology companies.
And who else collects this kind of data then? Does Google and does Amazon or?
I mean, Google, the big question for me on Google is Gmail. If you consent to use Gmail, they have real access to some of your deepest, darkest thoughts. And they do make use of that content because they also target ads based on the content of some of those emails or have traditionally. So there's some of the same questions with Google.
I just saw something this morning about Gmail. First of all, in the little interesting factlets from the New York Times, the first one that caught my attention is the one right above the Gmail, which is, get this, an estimated, this is totally unrelated to anything we're talking about, I just found it interesting, an estimated 4.7 million households in the United States owned at least one reptile in 2016. 5 million houses have snakes.
It wasn't my house, that's for sure.
Your kids don't have snakes?
No, hell no.
No, frogs?
No.
I mean, lizards?
We're not a reptile house.
Oh, yeah.
Dogs and cats,
There are two kinds of houses.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that kind of frightening?
Yeah, I don't like that stat.
No.
That's
okay.
too many.
But now to the Gmail. More than 1.2 billion people have active Gmail accounts. That's stunning. Yeah. Worldwide, I'm sure, right? But
yeah.
Ooh,
I mean, Facebook users 2.2 billion.
Is
that's a whole lot of people.
To your point about Gmail, right? Like I remember
reptiles?
Not about reptiles, but about Gmail. Like I remember when Gmail first came around, and there was a mini uproar at first when they said, we will, not us personally, but we have software that's going to be essentially scouring your emails and your conversations to target ads to you because that's how we're going to make money here, right? It's a free service. I think because so many people use it, I think we can say it's probably the best free email client out there, and they're making money off of it because they're scanning our emails. Like they owned up to that. They said that's what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And we chose to go along with it.
Right. I mean,
present company included. I'm completely guilty of this.
Right. I mean, almost everybody I know has abandoned their old email account for a Gmail account.
Yeah.
It's really become universal.
And one of the reasons it's so appealing is it stores thousands and thousands and thousands of messages. Remember the old days you'd have to go in and delete your old email messages? So we're paying for all that storage capacity in one way or another.
Right. So what is Zuckerberg likely to say today?
He's going to apologize. We've already seen his opening statement.
Said it.
He's
How
going to
many
apologize
times?
over and over again.
Very sorry.
It was my
Very
mistake.
sorry.
This is my company. At the end of the day, I run things. I'm very sorry. I think one of the things he's going to make painfully clear is that some of the practices that were the most egregious, they stopped a couple years ago. So we're learning about things that happened in the 2014-2015 time period. They've since sort of tightened up a bit on the privacy front. So this Friends of Friends feature that was sort of, I would love to hear a defense of it. I'm not quite, why, and if I consent to give someone, an advertiser, my information, why I can give my friends' information over to them.
Yeah.
They realized at some point, in part because of the use of the feature by the Obama campaign, which Republicans are likely to bring up, they tightened up on that in about 2015. So I think he's going to make the point that we have changed some of the things that people found most offensive in sort of our growing period.
And he's going to promise any more changes or new,
They're working on a bunch of things. Yeah.
Reforms.
A lot of the features that they've made a point of saying they're working on are election related. So this political ad transparency, that may well come up. So in the past, during the 2016 election, there was this discussion of, Russians and others running ads sort of trying to influence the U.S. presidential election in inappropriate ways. They are they're in the process of instituting transparency around that. So you at least have to say who you are. You have to validate your address if you place a political ad on the platform. So he's probably going to talk about some of the things that they're doing around the election front.
And maybe you don't pay in rubles.
That's one thing that it was a point strongly made during the last round of hearings, which happened with the general counsels.
I'm sorry that Al Franken is not there for many reasons, but that's one because he really zeroed in on that.
They
mocked them for
couple folks
not
have made a point of
that these may have come from Russia.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Given that they were
there were signs.
Okay, so here is what it seems to me is the heavy hammer. No secret that Congress may be holding over the head of Mark Zuckerberg. Senator Bill Nelson, who's the chair of the Commerce Committee, or ranking Democrat, sorry, wouldn't be the chair. The Republicans are in charge. He was the first one, I believe, that Mark Zuckerberg met with yesterday, or certainly one of, and he met with reporters afterwards. Here's Senator Nelson.
I believe he understands that regulation could be right around the corner.
Whoa, there's the big R word, something that Silicon Valley does not want to hear.
Yeah.
They're likely to hear it.
The follow-up question, of course, is what kind of regulation? Facebook sort of, after delaying for a long while, they've agreed to this some of the principles around this political transparency. That's what a lot of members of Congress have pushed for, this idea that you have to have disclosures and disclaimers on political ads. My sort of personal sense of this, it's not hugely painful for Facebook to agree to have, paid for by Americans for X in the footer of some of their advertising. So if that's the sort of regulation that Facebook gets away with, I think they'll be quite all right with that.
If that's all they get, they'd be a big smile on their face.
At the other end of the spectrum is sort of this talk of making them some sort of public utility.
That's what I've heard too, right? Which would mean what? That I guess they'd have all kinds of hoops they'd have to dance through, right?
Yeah, it's unclear exactly how that would work.
They'd have a government agency they'd have to respond to, right?
Yeah, and it's, some of the talk about the internet service providers making that a little bit more, it's not a public utility, but there has been this push in the Obama administration to make them a little more responsible for being neutral about carrying content and that sort of thing. So that could be applied to Facebook. It's not entirely clear how that would work. I think, Steve Bannon, again, we've spoke about him earlier. He also, when he was in the White House, talked a lot about making Facebook, Google, and Twitter public utilities. And I think in some ways it's just, holding out the scariest possibility for these tech companies and then kind of push them more in the middle to.
So do you think this is something where the right and the left could come together on?
It's interesting because there has been a lot of conservative anger at Facebook and Twitter in particular and YouTube too, actually, which is Google owned, about, quote unquote, censoring conservative leaning videos, tweets, all that sort of thing. So there has been a lot of, anger on the right at Silicon Valley. Steve Bannon talked about the lords of Silicon Valley. He would sort of rant and rave about them. When it comes to this conversation about, okay, what do we actually do? What sort of checks on the free market might we put in place? Then Republicans tend to back off a bit.
Well, it seems maybe a bridge too far for Republicans to get on their high horse and talk about more regulation. Right.
It's unusual.
I mean, it contradicts everything they're saying in every other field.
Yeah.
Particularly look at EPA, just getting rid of every regulation they can. Department of Transportation across the board, HHS, and yet in this field they would want more regulation. Really?
I think in some ways though it is fueled by this cultural anger at some of these companies. I mean, we've written a little bit at Politico about the idea that the Silicon Valley is the next front on conservative culture wars, right? For a while it was sort of academia, then it was Hollywood, and now it's the technology industry. So there is some passion fueling this, but in terms of actual regulation,
what I find puzzling about that is because the conservatives have done so well using the social media.
I think that's where their anger comes from.
But they really have excelled. I think they've more so than liberals or progressives in the use of the social media.
Absolutely. And if you have conservative thinkers,
stronger.
I mean, there are a lot of people that think they won the White House on the back of Twitter in some ways, and Facebook too.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where their anger comes from in some ways is, this is our medium. We've invested so much in it. You had a lot of conservative thinkers and voices. actually pour a ton of money into building up Facebook profiles and that sort of thing. So they get particularly angry when they see themselves being restricted on those platforms.
All right, so out of time, but Zuckerberg testifies today and tomorrow, too, right?
Yes.
House committee tomorrow? Boy. He's going to
It's
go
a long
home.
week.
Buckle up.
Exactly. Hey, so great to see you, Nancy. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Check her
Is
work
the
at
Bill Press
politico.com.
Show.
I wanted to find a bank with a purpose. I wanted to find a place that would take my money and not use it to cause the financial crisis, but to fix the financial crisis and to help end income inequality.
The people that we employ are usually clients right off the streets. They don't have an account, but Amalgamated is willing to get that started for them.
Their reputation of supporting the working man, I think, speaks for itself. This is a bank that cares for their customers, and I appreciate that.
We were able to access a construction loan through the bank's programs, and that loan has helped us house 28 families in the community.
Amalgamated is a bank that was started for and about working people.
Many of our customers have a deep commitment to advocating for social and economic justice. We share that commitment, and we're not afraid to stand up and say that we need to change some of the way that the country does business.
Giving you everything you need to fight the Trump administration. This is The Bill Press Show. Live at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
First, they came after his national security advisor, then his campaign manager, his deputy campaign manager, and now the FBI raiding the offices of his personal attorney. Donald Trump calls it a disgrace and an attack on our country. Hey, hello, everybody. Just when you thought Robert Mueller was going away, he is back with a vengeance. Great to see you today. It's Tuesday, April 10. This is the Bill Press Show. We are coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, as always, with the news of the day, and giving you a chance to update yourself on what's going on here in our nation's capital, around the country, and around the globe. Not only that, giving you a chance to comment yourself on the news of the day. You know how to do so. Send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show. This Michael Cohen, whose office was raided yesterday, we first heard about him. He's been around for a while, but really most recently heard about him when he admitted that it was he who arranged or made the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels to keep her, where she would agree to keep quiet about her alleged relationship with Donald Trump from 2006 to 2007. What are those kinds of agreements all about, and how much are they worth? Tom Spiggle, is it, to pronounce it correctly?
Spiggle,
Yeah,
you got it.
Spiggle.
Yeah,
Spiggle or
it's like Wiggle with an SP.
Wiggle. Tom Spiggle is head of his own law firm, Spiggle Law Firm, who specializes in non-disclosure agreements and other plaintiff work. Joins us in studio and will walk us through it. Hi, Tom. It's good to see you.
Good to be here.
Lots of questions, particularly today. When you originally booked, we didn't know this was going to be the news of the day, but so glad you're here. And we'll jump right into it. But first, Peter has the big headlines of the day.
Court Press.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple other stories making news. Tell me who said this, Bill. I would run for public office again in a heartbeat. Those were the words of...
Bill Clinton.
Sarah Palin.
No.
Sarah Palin giving an interview to conservative host Mark Levin. He asked her if she was ever going to run for public office again, and she said, oh, yes, I would do it again in a heartbeat. She blamed the fact that she totally flamed out on, quote, some of those who were trying to mold me into something that I was not during the campaign. I don't know if she meant it as a promise to her supporters or a threat to those of us who cover politics, but she put it out there, so we'll see what her next move is. But
didn't she move to Arizona?
I don't know what she's doing.
Yeah.
I honestly have no idea. I have no idea.
She could run for mayor of Wasilla.
Yeah, right. Worked out so well the last time up there. By the way, one of the things you never, ever, ever, ever want to do is if you're at the airport, make a joke about having a bomb. That is what Green Bay Packers wide receiver Trevor Davis found out. He was arrested on a misdemeanor charge of making a criminal threat this weekend at LAX. He joked about smuggling a bomb in his luggage, and he and a female companion were taken into custody.
How dumb.
It's just one of those things you just don't do. You should know by now.
He said something like, "Did you pack the explosives?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's not funny. It's never funny. It's not going to end well for you. And this is a fascinating story, I think. CNN did a whole big piece on one of the largest Black Lives Matters pages on Facebook, right? You go on and you follow all the happenings of the Black Lives Matter movement. Turns out the whole thing is a scam. It's tied to a middle-aged white man in Australia, and it's not tied to the actual movement. It has almost 700,000 followers on Facebook. That's more than twice as much as the official Black Lives Matter page. So it just is a good reminder. Just remember out there, if you're going to follow something or like something on Facebook, it might not be what you think it is. It's fascinating. They dug into the whole story and how we got to here and how people got duped by it. But yeah,
I mean,
700,000
question. I mean, if there is fake news today, and there is, so much of it is on social media.
Take The Bill Press Show anywhere you go. Download our free podcast, search for The Bill Press Show on iTunes, and catch the highlights from every show.
And here we are on a Tuesday, April 10. Hello, everybody. The Bill Press Show. With all the news of the day, we're coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, and our studio on Capitol Hill. Good to have you with us today as we reach out to you online on YouTube, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget, check out our podcast throughout the rest of the day so you can catch up with parts of the show you might have missed or listen to the entire show, some of the interviews and some of the guests that you particularly wanted to hear from. Again, go to BillPressShow.com or anywhere that you find your podcast, iHeartRadio or whatever. We're also with you, of course, on television, on Free Speech TV nationwide, and on the radio, on the great WCPT, the progressive voice of Chicago, coming through loud and clear. Just a quick reminder, if you haven't seen or haven't gotten your copy of my new book, my memoir, From the Left, A Life in the Crossfire. Check it out on our website. Find out more about it and how you can get your copy and join people like Anderson Cooper and Bernie Sanders and Jerry Brown and Maxine Waters and Rosa DeLauro and Nancy Pelosi and others in their praise of the book. I think you'll enjoy it. Go to BillPressShow.com. Big news of the day, of course, the raid early yesterday morning by the Justice Department, FBI agents of Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's private attorney, personal attorney, raided his office, his home, and his hotel room looking for documents related to the Mueller investigation. Tom Spiggle is with his own law firm, the Spiggle Law Firm, joining us in studio. We first heard about Michael Cohen with this $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels for a non-disclosure agreement. How tight are those non-disclosure agreements? Do they hold up? Can she wiggle out of it?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question. They are normally pretty tight. It's a simple contract usually between, two parties who are settling a lawsuit, and as long as both parties agree to it and there is what we call consideration, which we've heard a lot of in the news, there has to be something of value exchange, and it's usually pretty simple. The defendant pays some money, and the person, usually a woman claiming the harassment, agrees not to talk about it, and that's usually a valid contract. They've raised a lot of interesting questions in this particular contract. And they are a matter of state law, so it depends on which state that they are in. So it will vary from state to state. This one's in California, and they've made some arguments about the requirements under California for it to be a valid agreement that all parties have to have signed, et cetera. So, there are some limited loopholes, but generally they're pretty tight and they are hard to get out of. It's a question often of not whether they are enforceable, but whether or not it makes sense for the defendant to try to enforce them, right? Because then it only throws more fuel on the fire if what they're trying to do is keep the whole matter quiet, which is what they want.
Okay, so Michael Avenatti, Stormy Daniels' attorney, is claiming that this is invalid because Donald Trump did not sign it. They did have arranged that both of them were going to sign it using pseudonyms.
Right.
Right. And his was PP, whatever. Somebody said why'd they choose those initials, but at any rate. But I've seen a copy of it, at least.
Yeah.
He didn't sign it.
Right. And he said he didn't know about it now, right? So, and they are claiming under California law that it's under California law that all parties have to have signed it. Now, that's not true in every state. In fact, in most states, it's not required that you sign the agreement.
In California, it is?
Well, they're making that claim under California law. We'll see what the courts, decide on that.
What do you know about
Well, I don't practice in California, so haven't litigated. I'll tell you in Virginia and D.C. and Maryland and Tennessee and North Carolina where we practice, that's not a requirement. Just the fact that one can accept a contract in a number of different ways.
Got it.
Signing it is one way. Another way to accept a contract is by performing, by doing what you're required to do under the contract. So,
or I guess you could have your attorney sign it for you.
Yeah.
In some states.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. An agent for you, which could be your attorney, to sign it. So I think it's an interesting question whether or not she is legally bound to it.
Let me ask you kind of a basic question.
Yeah.
Would you even entertain such a contract? You're the attorney.
Yes.
If you didn't know that your client had in fact done something wrong?
Well, you mean if I'm advising Donald Trump or if I'm on the defense side?
You have a client, right? And this person is saying, oh, this is non-disclosed. So you can deny it, but then would you actually give her money knowing, if you really knew your client had done nothing wrong? It seems to me you have to know or figure out or believe that your client was probably in the wrong and you're just trying to save his ass.
Well, I mean, it depends. I think probably in the case of Donald Trump, that's certainly true. I think there are a lot of instances where it would make sense for, if I don't do management side work, I don't advise companies, but where there might be good reason. A case in which the facts are more murky, right? There's something happened in the office, and there was a question about whether it was consensual and whether this should have happened, and both sides don't want to go to a public lawsuit. So the defendant says, "Hey, look, I'm willing to, I'll pay you some money to have this go away, and you be quiet." And it'd be unclear as to whether or not something wrong happened.
Okay, let me ask you this: would you, in that same case, would you dip into your own pocket, take out $130,000 out of your mortgage line of credit?
What, are you asking for a favor right now on air? I don't know how well you guys know each other.
And make that payment, number one, and number two, make that payment without telling your client you did it.
Oh, absolutely. My wife wouldn't mind at all if I mortgaged my house to make a payment on behalf of one of my clients. No, it's absurd.
See, it's just good lawyering.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. We do this all the time. I'm just like, I don't know if my client likes this or not, but I'm just, I've got this equity in my house. I live in Northern Virginia. What can I say? It's a good market. I've got an extra of 6 figures lying around. No, it's absurd, right? I mean, it never, ever, ever, never, ever would this happen in any kind of normal law practice. Right, it would be there's a question of practicality, right? Who has that kind of money, and why would you do that in the first instance? And the second is, as a matter of legal ethics, you couldn't do that without your client's knowledge to resolve the case. It would just be flat, and it's not even close.
You have to tell your client.
You have. In fact, it is a requirement under legal ethics that you take any settlement offered to your client, no matter how ridiculous. So let's say you and I are in a lawsuit and you come to me and you say, I want $10 million. I have to, even if as a lawyer think that is ridiculous, I am required by rules of ethics to go relay that to my client. So it certainly would be followed from that you can't ethically resolve a suit on behalf of your client without him knowing.
All right, so when Donald Trump says, as has been repeated several times this morning because it's relevant to the other news of the day, when he says he knew nothing about that $130,000 payment, your response is?
Michael Cohen's in trouble. He's in trouble, right? You just can't, as a matter of legal ethics, you can't settle a claim on behalf of your client without telling him.
Or could it be that Donald Trump is lying?
Oh, well, no. Of course not. Donald Trump lying. How dare you? Of course, I mean,
God
absolutely.
Forbid God forbid I would suggest that. Okay, I'm sorry. I take that back. Right, okay.
Absolutely.
But one or the other.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no good way out of this, right? Either he's lying or he's throwing his lawyer under the bus.
Right. Okay, which, by the way, I think he'd be more than willing to do.
Of course,
he's thrown the Attorney General under the bus, right? So
why not?
So why not his own lawyer? All right, now let's get to this raid yesterday. Donald Trump tweeting about it this morning. The raid, the FBI. By the way, the raid was led by the U.S. Attorney in New York, right?
Yes, yeah.
Who was appointed by Donald Trump to replace Preet Bharara.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so it's his own guy.
Right, who's approving this? Likely. I mean, we are, it's the way these things usually play out. And I used to be a federal prosecutor. The way these things usually play out is that you've got to get sign off from the local office to do that.
Okay, so they raided Michael Cohen's home, his office, and his hotel room at the Lowe's Regency Hotel. Should we assume that they wouldn't do this unless they had some pretty compelling evidence that they were going to find something?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and the fact that
this is not something you do like.
No, it's very likely there were a number of people
casually
in very high levels who were a part of this decision making. I mean, not only do you have the Southern District of New York, the U.S. Attorney's Office there, which is a very robust office known for its independence and competency involved with this. You'd have people from the high levels of the Department of Justice involved in this, signing off on it before any move was made. And then, of course, they have to take it to a federal judge to sign off on this. So it's not
because they did have a warrant. They had to have a warrant.
They had a valid warrant. So I can assume that this was a matter of much discussion.
And among the documents they were looking for were the documents pertaining to this Stormy Daniels non-disclosure agreement, which is why I wanted to start there. What relevance does that have to the Mueller investigation?
Well, we don't know that it has any relevance to the Mueller investigation. I mean, it could be that there's a connection with election law. I mean, that's certainly a possibility. That was a campaign contribution. But we'll see. I mean, one of the reasons that it's in the posture that it's in is that Mueller made this referral because he decided he was not going to follow up on this either for any number of reasons. It could have been that he decided it was not within his purview. But he had this information that suggested to him a violation of federal law, and so he sent it over to the Southern District and said, "Hey, this is which happens all the time, right? I mean, U.S. Attorney's Office get referrals all the time, and they can decide whether or not to follow up on them. So we'll see whether it has relevance, or if it's just a straight, plain vanilla. This is not to minimize it, a bank fraud." Which has nothing to do with the Trump.
So you're saying this is really not part of the Mueller investigation, but came out of and is separate from.
Yeah, we don't know for certain, but that seems to be at least one possibility for how this went to the Southern District and was something that was taken up by the Southern District. One possibility is that Mueller, as part of the investigation, came across, and I'm just speculating for certain, but that there was bank fraud. That when Michael Cohen told his bank why he needed that $130,000, he didn't say to pay off an adult film star actress who has allegations against the president. He likely did not say that. He said something else, which there are lots of laws about this. Banks kind of frown on that, and so does the federal government, lying to banks that this would be bank fraud. So if he came across that, which would be pretty plain on the face of the documents, right? This would not be a particularly complicated matter. Then he might say, this is not part of my investigation. Again, speculating here, but this seems to make sense with the posture of it. But would refer to the Southern District to say, you guys can follow up this on if you want, and then they did. And as you point out, these are all Trump, almost all of them Trump appointees who are making this decision.
Yeah. The Washington Post this morning says the three things that they are looking at, I don't know what their source is, are bank fraud, as you indicated, wire fraud, or the possibility of a campaign that
Yes.
just violates campaign law because it was made, this payment 11 days before the election,
Right.
Ostensibly to influence the outcome of the election, and then not reported as a campaign contribution.
Right.
So,
Right. Absolutely. Any one of those three.
You'd say Michael Cohen's in trouble?
Oh, yes. I don't think there's any question. On multiple fronts. Yeah. He's in big trouble.
Right. Have you been interviewed to be Donald Trump's new lawyer, by the way?
He's going down the list. He hasn't gotten to the S's yet, apparently, because I haven't gotten that car yet.
It is interesting that usually working for the President of the United States is like the most prestigious job you can
Absolutely.
have, right? I mean, if you've got a law firm and you put that, it's like, the shirt maker for the king or something, right?
Yes.
You put that on your front door.
Sure. Makes your career.
Makes your career.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, if you get called, you probably already have a decent career, but it's the biggest feather you can put in your cap, right?
Mhm.
Absolutely. So the fact that he's having trouble with this, it suggests, a number of different things, that he's obviously probably a difficult client, as one can imagine, and that this is a firestorm unlike any we've seen in many a decade, even for seasoned white-collar criminal professional lawyers. And John Dowd was certainly one of the best. And the fact that he's leaving, I could see a lot of lawyers looking at that and saying, if John Dowd's leaving, I'm not stepping into that.
Apparently one of the areas of disagreement that John Dowd had with Donald Trump is whether or not he should testify in front of or be deposed by Robert Mueller.
Yeah.
What would your advice be?
Don't.
Just flat out.
Just
right?
don't. I mean, this is a common problem with, on the white collar, big time prosecutions or investigations like this. There's the public relations angle and the political angle, which, is what Donald Trump is looking at. And there's the legal angle. And from the legal angle, it's almost always don't talk. There's almost nothing good can come out of that. And it's also a common problem with high-profile defendants who believe that they can talk their way out of anything. And then they get in front of a grand jury, or they get in front of a federal prosecutor.
And that's Donald Trump, isn't it?
Oh, right. And they get in front of a federal prosecutor,
Classic.
and they get tied in knots, and they end up with a perjury charge, essentially, or lying to a federal investigator. So I think it's a legal matter. It's not a close call. He doesn't talk.
Well, so on the legal matter and on the public relations matter, it'll look bad. Pardon me, but you say, well, so what? That'll go away eventually, and at least you're not in legal trouble that way.
Right. I mean, I think as a lawyer, and that's a common tension, but you've got to not look at the public relations angle. Do you want to stay out of jail, or do you want to look good in front of cameras, which is it,
Well, so I understand that advice, but can a president, or can anybody just refuse to testify, refuse to meet with the prosecutor?
Well, for mere mortals, normally
Go ahead.
Normally,
Sorry.
no.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
if you were subpoenaed, to come in front of the grand jury, you can't refuse that. I think the president, it's a different legal matter as to whether or not he can be compelled to do it.
But wasn't that decided with Bill Clinton and Paula Jones?
Well, those were civil matters, so that was different. But to get to the non-disclosure angle here, absolutely. It's been decided that, at least in those circumstances, a president, even though you're a sitting president, you can't duck legal process. Does that mean that you can decline a voluntary invitation, which is what this is from Mueller right now, right? He's not talking about compelling Donald Trump. He's like, hey, I'd like to talk to him.
Yeah, right.
Anybody could be free in that circumstance to say, you know what, I decline your polite invitation. I'm not going to do that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know we'd have a good time, but...
Right. We'd love to chat over coffee, but
right.
You're going to have a couple agents sitting there taking notes, and I'm not interested.
And I'm so busy, right?
Right.
I just happened to have a tea time that day, right? Whatever day it happens to be.
Yeah.
So how do you see the Stormy Daniels thing playing out?
Wow, I mean, who knows, right? It's a fascinating
It doesn't
issue.
seem to be going away.
Yeah, it's not going away, right?
It's not, yeah.
And this is an interesting point, too.
Do you know Avenatti?
No, I don't know him.
Yeah.
He seems to be a fantastic lawyer, but I don't know anything about him other than what I've seen on TV and read about him. I mean, he certainly is putting on the full court press in a very effective way I mean, this is like an NDA matter, a non-disparagement agreement matter, like you would on steroids. Like this is not usually how they play out. And the interesting play here formally, we'll see if Michael Cohen continues to handle it, but to move it to federal court to try to get it put back in arbitration, which is another issue that comes up with the NDAs. Is a lot of times women, and mostly women, they can't even get their case heard. I mean, they get sent to arbitration where it's essentially silent, nobody hears about it, and that's what they're trying to do in this case.
That's what Trump's lawyers are trying.
Yeah, they want. That's one of the reasons they removed it to federal court. Is they look, we've got this arbitration agreement in our contract, we want it enforced, and again for cases involving mere mortals, 9 times out of 10, this is not a close question. Like a federal judge will say, there's an arbitration provision, I'm sending you to arbitration, and then the cameras go away. It's not public, right? I mean, it is literally swept under the rug.
Right. So, but what I don't understand about this is I went back, Peter, help me out. I forget the name of the site that originally published her story like 5 years ago, right after the affair ended, I think.
I forget now, but it was out there, but I forget where it was. Yeah.
I just went online and went back, and there it was. So in a sense, she's already told her story.
Yeah.
I mean, in excruciating detail, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think that is probably what.
So what's the point, right?
Yeah, I think that is what Trump's lawyers were trying to do for a long time, was trying to ignore it, which is frankly a good thing to do, right?
Yeah,
because it's only giving it more attention if they opposed it, which is why why you saw the president who was not shy about commenting on things, not talk about this at all for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that
he still hasn't
right.
for Stormy Daniels. He's been pretty. I don't think he's tweeted at all.
Yeah,
about her.
But they just can't make this go away. It continues to become a news story, and so they are forced now to comment on it. But I think you're right. I think in most instances, it doesn't make sense for the defendant to even contest it at a point, right? I mean, because what they want is for this to be silent, and if they are commenting on the fact about how it's not silent, it only gives it more, the fire more oxygen.
But it does seem that with Avenatti and with Stormy Daniels, that Trump has kind of met his match in terms of somebody using the media to, In fact, that's a good question. As an attorney, how important, you've got a case, how important do you see the use of the media at all as a tool, as a factor in your handling a case?
In most cases, no, just because the media is not showing up at my doorstep for most cases.
Yeah, right.
So it's not really an angle that's available to play. When there's a lot of press attention, it can be used to either party's advantage, but I think most lawyers, most lawyers, I think, are ill-equipped to do that. You throw yourself out there, you're not sure which way the arrows are going to come and how the story's going to play. So the short answer is yes, it can be a big advantage, and the Stormy Daniels is certainly using it to her advantage. I mean, this is a case where the PR angle is probably the primary angle here for her.
Right.
They're using it in an expert way. For most cases, the press is not showing up to talk about them.
All right, so this is just one front. You got Stormy Daniels. There's also this woman, Karen McDougal, former Playboy model, who is trying to get, I think, out of her non-disclosure agreement as well.
Yeah.
And is that similar to a Stormy Daniels case, or where is that? Or did he sign that one, or do you know? We haven't heard much about that one.
Yeah, I think that one's a little different because she is claiming that she did not get the benefit of the bargain. It wasn't the signature issue.
She got more money, I think, $150,000 from the National Enquirer publisher.
Right, and she's saying, like, my understanding was that I was going to get these writing gigs, and this part of it didn't happen, so therefore they breached it. And it just hasn't caught on the way Stormy Daniels' lawsuit has. I'm not sure why. Maybe because she gave the interview where her beef seems to be not that I was. It's not as salacious. It's not in some ways, right? Because she's like, well, I was in love with him, and I just wanted a better deal, essentially. And Stormy Daniels is like, she's coming head on to him and saying, this is, I want out completely. I want to be able to tell my story. So I think that's why we haven't heard much about it.
All right, so then you've got also Summer Zervos.
Yes.
In the New York Supreme Court.
Absolutely.
Former apprentice player, whatever. and who's suing for sexual harassment in a case at the New York Superior Court, in this New York Superior Court, where the judge has said this case can go forward.
Yeah. These are fascinating kind of chinks in the armor because we also got the Bill O'Reilly case, right? Which there was a case in the Southern District of Illinois. Was that right? No. It's in New York, where similarly his non-disparagement agreements are being challenged. And so we're seeing this play out in a number of high-profile cases where plaintiffs are using defamation, which is what Stormy Daniels is using. What Summer Zervos is using and Paula Jones used to very effective. Well, Paula Jones was slightly different, but these plaintiffs are using it in a very effective way to bring very powerful men before the courts, which is sort of heartening to see some of our institutions actually work, right? Where these courts have said, in the case, President Trump with Zervos is like, no, this case is going forward just because you're the president. Just like Bill Clinton couldn't shut this down, you're going to have to sit for this deposition. And the same thing is happening with Bill O'Reilly in the Southern District, where they have brought defamation claims against him. And so you've seen these powerful men or people who represent them get in trouble by trying to have their cake and eat it too, right? Because they had the non-disparagement agreements. They're like, hey, we're not going to talk about this. But then they turn around and say, these women were lying, which gave them the open to come around and say, well, that's you guys, you can't have it both ways, right? So now we're going to sue you for defamation.
Right. So if you add that up, right, Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal, Summer Zervos, and then Robert Mueller on top of it, this president's in a lot of legal jeopardy.
It's a toxic brew. It really is for him. He's got to fight this battle on multiple fronts with multiple legal issues in multiple courts, and there's no obvious way for him to shut any of them down. So it really, as a lawyer watching this, it is just fascinating to see. This is a law school exam like no law school professor could ever dream up, I think.
And he's facing it all at the present time without an attorney.
Right. Well, he's got attorneys, but he certainly does not have
he doesn't
the
have
kind
a lead
of team.
attorney dealing with the Mueller stuff for sure.
Yeah,
that was John Dowd's job.
Exactly. He doesn't have the kind of white-collar criminal defense team one would expect to see with this level of legal jeopardy.
Can Michael Cohen continue to be his personal attorney now that he himself is under the gun?
I don't see how he can. I think he's conflicted out of this, and he's got his own battles to fight now. I think it will be very difficult for him to effectively do that.
Remember, Donald Trump tweeted this morning.
Oh yeah,
that attorney-client privilege is dead.
Right.
That's his tweet this morning. Attorney-client privilege
is that your conclusion from what happened yesterday?
No, not at all. While I think prosecutors are, and certainly the courts are very protective of attorney-client privilege. It is a very powerful legal right that we have in this country. But there are two issues. One, not every time you talk to a lawyer is it attorney-client privilege, right? If you and I are talking about baseball or whatever it is, that's not attorney-client privilege. If it is not for the purpose of legal advice, it's not attorney-client privilege. If there are other people involved who are not there as part of the representation, you share it on Twitter, you share it on email, then you can waive attorney-client privilege. And then there's this crime fraud exception, which you can't hide behind attorney-client privilege if you are both trying to, endeavoring to commit a crime. So it's far from dead. But these are very well-established exceptions to the attorney-client privilege, or just even the parameters of when it exists and when it doesn't. And these questions come up quite frequently, particularly when you've got an attorney who is serving multiple roles for an individual or a company. When is he acting as an attorney providing legal advice such that the attorney-client shield is up?
Yeah, I don't think Michael Cohen is the first attorney in the history of histories to be arrested for covering up for one of his clients.
Yeah, in this case, it hasn't been arrested yet.
Sure. Fair.
But that was the first defense that we heard from his attorney. This is a violation. How can they go in? There is an attorney-client privilege. They can't go in and seize these documents. And then Donald Trump echoing that this morning. But clearly, the U.S. attorney in New York and Rod Rosenstein and Robert Mueller and everybody else know about attorney-client privilege. And if they did this, they did it in a way that
it's
will not violate attorney-client privilege.
And it's no question authority legal issue for them. And I don't know if this is happening here. I would assume so. But traditionally, the way this is handled, by the U.S. Attorney's Offices and Federal FBI is that there are two separate teams, right? So the team who collects the information and grabs it all is not the one who's involved in prosecuting. And then they will have another team called what's called a taint team, right? And that team will come through, and their whole job is to look through this information and say, what's arguably attorney-client privilege and what is not. And they will only share the information that is not attorney-client privilege, or in which they're the crime, which or other exceptions. They'll only share that information with the prosecuting team. So there is, and I'm sure there is a shield between the raw information and what the prosecuting team actually sees.
Right. Final question. I'm going to let you go, but
sure.
So we said earlier that Robert Mueller gets this information. He prefers the U.S. attorney. U.S. attorney says this is serious enough. He goes into this. So related, coming from perhaps a Mueller investigation, but like separate from. But is it also possible that Michael Cohen could be the bridge between Stormy Daniels and the Russian investigation?
Oh, it's entirely possible. I mean, now that
maybe they're not unrelated.
Yeah. Well,
but how do we know, right?
They're, depending on what they got in their raid, if they discover other material, then absolutely it could provide another channel back to Robert Mueller that could relate to the Russian investigation. So we'll see, but it's entirely possible.
I think you better check your messages, because I know that Donald Trump has gone down the list looking for a good lawyer. He's going to get to the S's.
I know, right? He's going to wait. I'll let you know when he calls.
Come back in if he calls. All right.
Absolutely.
People can reach you at SpiggleLaw.com, right?
That's right.
Spiggle Law. It's SPIGGLE Law.com. Thanks, Tom. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Good luck. We'll be right back and wrap things up here on a Tuesday, April 10.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning.
Why? Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you eat stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit.
I forgot. I'll do better. Please,
Don't quit on me. Okay. But remember, it's not what you say. It's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Adventure can be found anywhere, but the best place to start is in the forest.
I spy something beginning with S.
Snow?
No.
Snow-covered trees.
Nothing to do with snow.
Head outside to discover incredible animals and beautiful plants that come together to create an unforgettable adventure.
Wow.
So grab your loved ones.
Don't even.
And explore a world of possibilities.
Come on, this way.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find the closest forest or park to you.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He really likes to be around people. And as soon as I start to make my breakfast, Hamilton is right there. I get out my mat and I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath. He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties. He knows he's a pretty big deal. I mean, look at this little face. How could you not love him?
video, Bill's commentary, the best clips from the show, all in one place. YouTube.com/The Bill Press Show.
Tuesday, October, holy hell.
Feels
April.
like it.
It does feel
Feels like it
By the
outside.
way, yeah, a little cold, and so no wonder I got confused here.
I get it.
It's Tuesday, April 10th. Hello, everybody. Great to see you. The Bill Press Show winding up here on a Tuesday. And lots and lots going on. It's one of those days where we thought was going to be a relatively quiet day. We'd be talking about Mark Zuckerberg all day because this is his big day in front of the Senate Commerce and Judiciary Committee. There are going to be 45 senators, by the way, on the panel today, combining those two committees. It's 45-1. And we'll be watching that, but we've ended up talking a lot more about what happened up in New York yesterday morning with the FBI raiding the home, office, and hotel room of Donald Trump's personal attorney. And we're talking about that from our studio here on Capitol Hill, brought to you today by the United Steelworkers and their international president, Leo Gerard, the Honorable Leo Gerard, leading the United Steelworkers, North America's largest industrial union, representing over 1.2 million active and retired members. They do great work protecting the steel industry, rebuilding America's steel industry. Check out their website at usw.org. With all the news about Michael Cohen and Donald Trump, a lot of Twitter comments. Peter?
Yes, indeed. We got comments. Remember, you can find us on Twitter at BP Show. Miles says you can expect Trump to make the military strike on Syria much bigger than it would have been. It's all a distraction to distract the media away from the FBI and Michael Cohen. That's a scary thought, but I certainly
I was thinking about that this morning.
Yeah.
The one way to get Michael Cohen off the front page would be some massive military strike in Syria.
Remember, we also have our chat room, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show. Lots of good comments there. Something Spectacular is the name of this user who says, part of the gamble. The bigger the risk, the bigger the gain. Lawyers go down all the time, which, it's a real thing. And if you need another endorsement of how good our live chat room is at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show, Daniel says this live chat is already 3 orders of magnitude more cohesive than our Congress. It's not really,
that's
not really
a low
saying
bar.
much.
That's a low bar,
This shall be the
yes.
fulcrum on which the resting lever will move the world.
Oh, very nice.
How about that?
Yeah.
So
I like
get
that.
involved. Get involved. Give us your comments either on Twitter at BP Show, on Facebook, of course, at Bill Press Show, or in the chat room, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
So apropos of nothing, but just throwing it out there
Sure.
because other things catch our attention. I read the story yesterday about this veteran, I think the last living veteran of World War II. He's like,
oh, wow,
111 years old.
Holy cow.
Maybe that's World War I. I don't know. But anyway, he's 111 years old. He's certainly the oldest American people on the planet. So this morning online during the break, I just saw that the answer to his long life.
Oh, how did he live to get to 100?
He likes soaking in hot springs.
Okay.
That's pretty cool.
That's a great thing to do.
Eating sweets.
Hell yeah.
And he smokes 12 cigars a day.
12 cigars a day?
12 cigars a day.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, right. So
I mean, a doctor will tell you that that's way too many. But if this guy's lived to be 111.
Here it is. A 111-year-old veteran smokes 12 daily cigars. Yeah.
That's a lot of cigars.
111 is a lot of years.
I know. I mean, who am I to say that's a bad idea?
Right. So there you go. We're not suggesting that you follow his
I haven't
his
smoked
advice.
12 cigars in my entire life.
No, I haven't either.
12 a day.
And I couldn't. And you know
God.
what? I get sick. I feel sick even thinking about that.
Seriously,
right?
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's borderline too much is what my gut tells me. But again, what do I know?
All right. Yeah, on the big story of the day, hey, while we're taking time out here, let me give you another quick reminder. Number 7 on the bestseller list on the Washington Post.
Hell
It
yeah.
is, from From the Left, Life in the Crossfire, my new book. Very proud of that, and love to share it with you. Go to it's really a lot of fun. The whole kind of a romp through my life so far. I call it the memoir, part 1. Go to our website at BillPressShow.com if you haven't already done so, and you can find out a lot more about it and join Bernie Sanders and other good friends with their endorsement of the book. As Bernie says, it's the tale of an enraged and often outraged citizen who loves his country and wants to see it move forward in a progressive direction. Thank you, Bernie. That kind of sums it up. BillPressShow.com, and you'll find out more about it there. Yes, the big story which broke, it happened early yesterday morning, didn't break until later yesterday afternoon because of the secrecy involved. But the news is, if you haven't caught up with it already, that the Department of Justice, the FBI, through the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York, in Manhattan, raided the home, the office, and the hotel room of Donald Trump's personal attorney, the one and only Michael Cohen, who he's his very close buddy, very close friend. He and Donald Trump and Melania, First Lady, have dinner often, hang out often. He's represented Donald Trump for a long time. So people who say that he's a difficult client, and he must be, but Michael Cohen and he get along. When he was a developer, he had all of his business attorneys, but Michael Cohen was his personal attorney before the campaign, during the campaign, and continues to do so at the White House while he's president. And it was Michael Cohen, of course, who arranged this $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels, a non-disclosure agreement for her to keep quiet about this alleged affair she had with Donald Trump from 2006 into 2007. $130,000, which, remember, Michael Cohen says he paid out of his own pocket, taking advantage of a line of credit he had for his home mortgage. And he did it only because he loved Donald Trump so much. He wanted to help a friend, and he never told Donald Trump about it. And Donald Trump never knew anything about it. That's the guy that the FBI raided yesterday morning. This is huge, huge, huge news, and very, very damaging to Donald Trump, and very dangerous for Donald Trump, because follow the people that the FBI now has gone after, either through Robert Mueller or now through the U.S. Attorney in New York, right? Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's national security advisor, Paul Manafort, his campaign manager, Rick Gates, his deputy campaign manager, then all the rest who are maybe farther down the scale, and now Michael Cohen, who's really the number one because he's closer to Donald Trump than any of the others were. He's worked for him so long, and he's representing him as an attorney, so he knows all the secrets. Michael Cohen, the president's personal attorney. As our last guest, Tom Spiggle, and other legal experts have said, Jeff Toobin on CNN and others, that there's no way this would have happened unless the FBI had compelling evidence that there was criminal activity on the part of Michael Cohen. They're saying it could either be bank fraud or wire fraud or a campaign finance violation, meaning this $130,000 payment was made 11 days before the election of 2016, perhaps to influence the outcome of the election, and yet was not reported as a campaign contribution. That's against the law.
Well, by the way, that particular issue is something we've talked about for weeks now, since the Stormy Daniels story sort of became front of mind. There is no good outcome for Michael Cohen in this. He either conspired with Donald Trump to cover up this story and to try and buy her silence, or
didn't tell his client.
If you take him at his word that he just did it on his own, that's a violation of campaign finance laws. It just is.
Yeah.
So one way or the other, he done screwed up.
Yeah. No, he's in trouble. And the other possibility is this could be a bridge between, who knows, right, where the money was going. This could be a bridge between Stormy Daniels and the Russian investigation, if there is one. Michael Cohen certainly involved in both. And by the way, just to throw this in right now, on top of this, before the story broke about yesterday morning's raid, the big Robert Mueller-related story reported by the New York Times is that Mueller is investigating a $150,000 contribution made by a Ukrainian billionaire, Viktor Pinchuk, to the Trump Foundation in October 2015 during the presidential campaign. Donald Trump had already announced he wasn't yet the nominee, of course. And what was this $150,000 used for? Where did it come from? And what are they doing taking money, foreign money, from this Ukrainian billionaire who is very well connected, known to be well connected to Vladimir Putin and to the Kremlin. So you got all of that landing at the same time. Again, possible connection with the Russian investigation. It caused a firestorm yesterday at the White House because suddenly Donald Trump, who wanted to talk about Syria, who was hoping this Mueller investigation was about to shut down. That's what they keep telling us. Well, it's winding down. There's nothing left. They haven't found any collusion. It's all over. So why don't they just fold their tent? Why don't they just shut it down? I remember wasn't that long ago that John Dowd, who later resigned, said publicly Robert Mueller should just shut the investigation down because they're finding nothing. There's nothing there. After yesterday, there's no. This disproves that whole theory. This thing is in full gear. It is going full speed, and it is getting closer and closer to Donald Trump himself, to the Oval Office. So when this hits yesterday for Donald Trump, it was, oh man, it was not just an attack on him. It's an attack on the entire country.
It's frankly a real disgrace. It's an attack on our country in a true sense. It's an attack on what we all stand for.
Yeah. That's funny. I thought we all stood for obeying the law. We all stood for, our system of justice, that no man's above the law. I thought that's what we stood for.
That's a response that only Trump could give.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's so perfectly Trump.
We've always said that he is the Louis XIV, right? He is l'état, c'est moi. Okay. So an attack on me is an attack on our entire country and everything we all stand for.
Crazy. Totally crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally normal brain.
Right.
Totally normal brain.
And of course, he throws out the old word that he has used for the Mueller investigation from day one.
I think it's disgraceful, and so does a lot of other people. This is a pure and simple witch hunt.
Oh yeah, witch hunt. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those people, those people who are conducting this investigation, they're all Democrats and they're all biased.
Biased group of people. These people have the biggest conflicts of interest I've ever seen.
Yeah, he actually said they were all Democrats, or just about all. Either Democrats, he said, or a couple of Republicans that work for President Obama. And then he goes back to a favorite target. He said they're not looking at the other side. They're not looking at the Hillary Clinton horrible things that she did and all of the crimes that were committed by her. Oh, yeah. How often has he said that? Don't look at me. Don't look at me. Look at Hillary Clinton. Look at those emails. Guess what, dude? They did look at Hillary Clinton and her emails.
It's sort of amazing to watch this happen in real time because you're starting to see how some of, yes, Trump's crackpot conspiracy theories get born, but also how some conspiracy theories get born just on the right, because it's anything but facing the facts. So as you mentioned, right, he brings up Hillary Clinton. He brings up the fact that the FBI is biased and how there are a lot of Democrats on Robert Mueller's team. Ray was saying that on Twitter there are conservatives who are saying that that the FBI and Robert Mueller's team started the fire in Trump Tower that we talked about yesterday so that they could get in there and plant evidence, right? And so it's kind of like they keep throwing these things up against the wall to see what will stick because it's anything but the truth.
Yeah, right. Actually, if you take, it's sort of like the birther theory. If you take that conspiracy, it was the Democrats who actually organized so that there would not be sprinklers in the building.
Right.
So that 12 years later, they could start a fire. Right? Yeah.
Damn, they're on to us. They finally figured out our grand plot to take him down.
Right. But no matter what excuses that they can use for this, this is very, very serious for the President of the United States. And, of course, he has to find somebody to blame. And so blaming the FBI, again, calling them all biased. But, who gets the number one blame? Gosh, poor little Jeffy Sessions. Yeah, he has to go out after his attorney general. No matter how many times Jeff Sessions just, yes, Mr. President. Yes, Mr. President. Yeah, you like a cup of coffee? Yes, Mr. President. He does everything he can. Particularly, think about the stuff that Jeff Sessions has done, right? I mean, he rolled back all the police community relations stuff. He has rolled back the rules on marijuana. He has sued California 3 times, right? He's doing everything he can to deport as many people as he can. I mean, he's doing everything he can, but he recused himself from the Russian investigation. And for that, Donald Trump, no matter how hard Jeff Sessions tried to save his job, Donald Trump will never forgive him. So yesterday, he points the finger of blame. Yep, who's number one? Jeff Sessions.
They raid an office of a personal attorney early in the morning. And I think it's a disgrace. So we'll be talking about it more. But this is the most conflicted group of people I've ever seen. The Attorney General made a terrible mistake.
The Attorney General, there it is. Number one, Jeff Sessions. Why did he what mistake did he make? He made a mistake in recusing himself. That Donald Trump has never forgiven, will never forgive, because with that, Jeff Sessions couldn't stop this raid yesterday, or as if he would have. And Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, now overseeing the Russian investigation, is the one who gave the green light. Again, Donald Trump.
He should have certainly let us know if he was going to recuse himself, and we would have put a different Attorney General in. So he made what I consider to be a very terrible mistake for the country.
So still today, he said he wishes he had a different Attorney General. Yeah.
I mean, he has some control over that.
He could fire Jeff Sessions.
Sure.
He's threatened to do it. People thought that he might. People thought for a while that Jeff Sessions might resign. He'd never resign. He has always wanted to be Attorney General, and now he is Attorney General, and he'll take all the abuse, right? I mean, yeah, as long as he can.
Yeah, totally.
As long as Donald Trump will let him stay there.
Yeah, no, he's not going anywhere. He's not going to go anywhere unless Donald Trump fires him.
Right. And speaking of firing people, well, there's one other person that Donald Trump has wanted to fire for a long time. And, of course, the speculation started yesterday once this raid became public that this might be it. This might be what would drive Donald Trump to fire the special counsel in his Richard Nixon moment. A reporter asked him as he was leaving the room, as the reporters were being herded out. You hear the reporter ask the question, barely hear him, but Donald Trump picks up the question, fire Robert Mueller. Here he is.
Why don't I just fire Mueller? Well, I think it's a disgrace what's going on. We'll see what happens. But I think it's really a sad situation when you look at what happened. And many people have said you should fire him.
Many people have said, yes, like Lou Dobbs last night on Fox News said, fire that SOB. We'll see what happens. There is his vote of confidence in Robert Mueller. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump does it. He can't fire him directly. We know that.
Right.
He'd have to ask Rod Rosenstein to fire him. Rosenstein would say no. So Donald Trump would, like Richard Nixon, keep appointing people who would say no until he found somebody who would say yes and fire him.
Donald Trump will 100% try and fire him.
Don't you think so?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, if for nothing else, right, it's because Donald Trump is a micromanager, control freak, and that he wants to, he can't stand the fact that somebody holds his fate in his hands.
Yeah.
Like Robert Mueller does.
And let me tell you, if he turns on Fox News, and that's where he gets his advice, not from John Kelly or anybody else, he will see Fox and Friends Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, Lou Dobbs, all of them will say fire Robert Mueller. I'll bet you he does it. And if he does it, these chicken, Republicans in Congress, they may squawk and scream, but they won't do anything about it. Oh, man. So, Mark Zuckerberg in front of the Senate Commerce and Judiciary Committees today. We'll see how that goes, and we'll wrap it up tomorrow. So have a great day. Come back and see us tomorrow, because we'll be looking for you.
This is the Bill Press Show.